I think for me, like the first step that was honestly where I thought, wow, this is successful, was the first time somebody liked a post and I didn't recognize the name. Which, as like silly as that sounds, but at the beginning, all you're doing is sharing it out to your friends. And, at the base, it's truly is just an apparel company, but we like to think that it's a lot more and it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, it's also kind of a history lesson.
Those teams played in the 40s and 50s, and you're getting to that point where anybody who would remember it is not around. So if you don't tell those stories, like I said, they're gonna disappear.
What does supporting local baseball mean to you?
It means so many things to so many people, and that's what it's all about. I think it's just telling baseball stories across the country that may go under the radar.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast, where we showcase and share the authentic stories of Northeast Indiana. 70% of our YouTube audience isn't subscribed to us, so if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on the exciting stories that we're telling. And if you're listening to us, make sure to follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Today, Brice is interviewing Logan Wiening, who is the owner and founder of Old Fort Baseball Co. If you're from Fort Wayne, then you might have seen his clothing sold at the local farmers market, or you could have also just seen people around wearing his designs. Logan saw the rich history of sports in this region and decided to use his design talents to cultivate that history and share it with others by redesigning old sports logos. Along with just selling his designs on clothing, Logan is also involved in the local sports community by organizing fundraisers for Little League teams, as well as organizing this year's first Vintage Baseball Showcase. Stay tuned to learn more about that event, as well as hearing Logan's story about how he is pioneering with his clothing company right here in Northeast Indiana. Let's jump into it.
Welcome back to another edition of the NEI Pioneer Podcast. I'm your host today, Brice Vance, copywriter here at NEI. And we have a special guest for you guys, one that I'm excited for, and I know he's excited to be on the show, and that's Logan Wiening from Old Fort Baseball Company. Thanks for coming in, Logan.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Brice.
So let's get into what Old Fort Baseball Company is. Obviously, you have some of the shirts that you're wearing. We have some on display here for you, for your company. What is Old Fort Baseball Company?
Yeah, so at the base of it, we are a baseball lifestyle apparel brand, based here in Fort Wayne. But really what we like to say is we're much more about telling stories and expanding the game and supporting baseball and sports in Fort Wayne, and really just supporting the community, and using apparel kind of as a vehicle for that. So, at the base, it's truly is just an apparel company, but we like to think that it's a lot more and it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here. I mean, exactly. With this podcast, with this platform, the whole Pioneer Starts Here movement, all the stuff that we're trying to do. So you fit in well with us here. So we were reading, some of the stories. You've been on, a couple of podcasts, some baseball podcasts specifically before, and some stories that I read. You're a self-taught graphic designer, and you went to Purdue Fort Wayne here for college, and you didn't, did you have take any classes, or was this all after graduating school?
It was when I was in school, but it was all when I was interning with the Mad Ants, just kind of playing around when I was the kind of intern that didn't go away. Like I kind of just stayed around because I wanted to learn and wanted to do stuff. So I kind of picked up Photoshop. It was on a computer that I was working at, and there wasn't really anybody in the office that was doing a ton of design work. Most of the intricate stuff was getting outsourced, but as far as like social media graphics and stuff like that, no one was really doing anything. So I had the opportunity to just kind of play with it and learn, and really fell in love with it that way. So just kind of kept growing and learning there, because I was given a good opportunity to do a lot and do more than even I probably would have done in a school situation, as from a design perspective, definitely.
Yeah. You and I, I think would share a lot in common for our love with baseball.
Yeah.
I grew up playing baseball. I still coach baseball to this day. you have to start, if you're going to start, a company, surrounded by baseball and supporting the local, communities here, the old teams. I know you're involved with the Tin Caps, mm-hmm. and we'll, touch on that a little bit later. But, where did your love of the game come from?
I've always kind of loved baseball. That's kind of, as a little kid, I'd say a lot of it goes back to baseball cards. That's mm-hmm. kind of the start of it. My dad's a diehard Cubs fan, mm-hmm. so I always grew up watching Cubs games pretty regularly. But, baseball cards were really the part that I was always sorting them and looking through them and, memorizing the stats on the back and knowing the players and things like that. So I think it just got very ingrained in me that way, and learning the history and kind of the culture around the game through that. So that's where it really, I think, starts for me, and then just continued to grow there. And I played baseball up until I was like 13, mm-hmm. But then never played beyond that. I really was more basketball as far as playing, and mm-hmm. then obviously worked in basketball for a long time. But I think baseball just always kind of held a special place in my heart, especially from the design elements and the history and kind of the culture around the game. Yeah. I mean, again, you and I are like the same.
Yeah. The newspaper was the thing for me. Looking at the box scores,
the transactions,
the
fine print transactions.
Yeah. I mean, I think they still do those. I mean, when I was at a newspaper here north of town, we still would do that, and we'd still get people upset. They would call the newspaper if we didn't have we called it the agate and the scoreboard. They would get people upset if the Tiger score wasn't in there or the Cubs score wasn't in there, and it's like, what can we do, man?
Exactly.
But I appreciate the passion for it. But if you're gonna be upset, we'll get you the next day. What did you have a favorite card collection or favorite card of all time that you had? Do you still have some cards?
I do still have some. Yeah. Recently, I've kind of very loosely gotten back into it, mm-hmm. and kind of went to my parents' house and was digging through some of what I have. I was always obviously looking for Cubs cards, and that's a lot of it. But I did get into kind of some weirder stuff for more obscure things. Mm-hmm. I had some like cards of Negro League players, and more vintage cards of teams that didn't exist anymore. And some of that, I think now looking back, leads to the design of like, I think I always had a lot of Montreal Expos cards because that logo, and to this day, I still really enjoy, and like the original Diamondbacks logo and the Devil Rays logo. Some of those that had unique design qualities, I definitely, when you look through my collection, there's a lot that have design features that I think stuck out to me even as a 6-year-old,
Yeah. I mean, I would hold on to those. I mean, those are going to be worth, I mean, probably, some of those are probably worth a lot of money now, but if you hold on to them for another, 50 years or so, they could be worth
a lot of the ones that aren't, or I keep a box in my office that go out with, orders when I always stuff a few cards in orders when I send them out, just for people to get cards that maybe don't have, aren't surrounded by them all the time. So just spread that a little bit.
So how did Old Fort Baseball Company start? What were you, starting out, thinking? Obviously you have a graphic design love, and you love history of baseball. So I imagine that's where this kind of marriage came for those two things that you love.
Yeah, I think, probably during the pandemic, you were watching a lot of brands and people on social who were just doing really cool stuff from a sports design element, whether it was redesigning logos or creating logos for teams that didn't exist, or doing just graphics of players or fake fake cards or things like that. And I always wanted something like that, but just couldn't really find anything that took. I would try to like post some graphics every once in a while, and nobody, it never really got the traction or anything. And I kind of started toying around with the idea of Fort Wayne baseball stuff and just seeing kind of where that would go. So I played around with a logo design, which is the logo that, we use today. And, just kind of came up with that to start, and then started playing around with some of the Daisies stuff and some of those different things just to see what the designs would look like. And when I got to a point where I had 3 or 4 things that I thought were kind of cool, I started doing some research into what would it look like if, we would sell some of this, or what could that look like?
Yeah.
I didn't want to do anything that was going to be a crazy financial risk or do anything huge, because it was just let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So I found some options for some print on demand shirts and things, and kind of built a website, and just was testing the waters kind of. So that's kind of where it started, was all just hey, this is an idea as a designer, and then slowly kind of putting it out into connections I had and onto social and sharing it with people, and just kind of let it go from there and let it grow organically. And enough people liked what I did at the start to kind of keep pushing me along to get to a point where it was like, okay, I can really do something with this and really make this a brand, and not just a little fun project.
Yeah, definitely sounds like, a passion project that has turned into something that's, been very successful. You're, being, publicized, everywhere. You're doing, so much, helping out with, the local little leagues, which we'll get into, and you're just doing a whole lot of, I can't imagine what did success in your eyes look like when you started this? What were you envisioning down the line for this to become?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I started, it was really just every step of the way, it was just somebody liking a picture on Instagram or a post. And I think for me, like the first step that was honestly where I thought, wow, this is successful, was the first time somebody liked a post and I didn't recognize the name. Which is silly as that sounds, but at the beginning, all you're doing is sharing it out to your friends. And, it's kind of like, okay, well, I know that person's a friend of this person. And like somebody like you, I would see your name pop up. Well, I know, like, I'm friends with, John Nolan and some of those guys who And so even that, I'm like, okay, it's still in that circle. Yeah. But once you started getting recognized outside of that, I think that was success at the beginning, but I think really I just wanted to be able to sell some products and be able to tell some stories about baseball. And that's really what we've got to do. So I think we've kind of hit that main success point that I could have ever thought of at the beginning, for sure.
For me, it was always from, when somebody would listen or watch a show that was somebody other than my grandma.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
She would be the biggest supporter and like message me after every show, like, oh, good job. Like, all right, when can someone else find my show here that is listening to it? So did you see, I mean, because when you bring up some of these old logos, I had, no idea of the Voltmen. I knew of the Daisies, but, I didn't know of the Kikiangas. Did you see like a gap in the market that there was like nobody was putting out stuff like this, and then you jumped on top of that and were like, this is something that I can take advantage of? Yeah,
I have always been a fan of, there's some companies in Indiana and just around the country that do very local based old sports stuff, and there's some ones that are more national that just kind of have like old arena football logos and old hockey logos and things like that, and I always thought that was really cool. But then you also, in Fort Wayne, you walk to the farmers market, you go into the shops down here, and you see so much Fort Wayne stuff, Indiana stuff, Midwest stuff, but nothing was ever sports. And sports is so, as a whole, not just baseball, is so important in this community. That was kind of that gap in the market that I thought, I can't believe no one's doing this, but if no one is, this, I want to create something that I would want to see and want to be available. So that was kind of what started it, and being able to do some of that and bring the sports element to that civic pride of goods that you are finding. Everyone in Fort Wayne loves Fort Wayne and loves supporting Fort Wayne and seeing Fort Wayne things. You see the flag everywhere. You see all the other Fort Wayne shirts and stuff around. So, I knew there were sports fans out there that would find that interesting and, like to learn about it, but also just want to be able to show their pride in Fort Wayne through sports and not just with kind of the team apparel that you're getting it when you go to Comets games or Tin Caps games or whatever that is.
Yeah, it's also kind of a history lesson for a lot of people. You know, like you said, bringing up those old teams that maybe, you know, maybe people have recognized or heard of before, like the Daisies or the Voltmen, but I think you're like providing, you know, some history here that, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, maybe younger generations don't know about. You know, might surprise some people. I told our boss the other day, like the first Major League Baseball game was held here in Fort Wayne, just off Main Street, and he was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, like you said, this town is sports are ingrained in the fabric of it. So like when you know bring up, you know, stuff like old logos and stuff like that, I imagine it's also piques some people's interest that are learning about, you know, new things to them that they had no idea was here in the city.
Yeah, and there's, you know, at a certain point, some of these things are kind of on that tipping point where if nobody keeps them alive right now, they're just going to go away.
Right.
And, you know, the Daisies will always stay around a little bit because of A League of Their Own.
Right.
You know, even though the Daisies aren't in the movie, but that'll always kind of persist. But somebody like the Voltmen, you know, Electric Works is huge right now. And yeah, the Tin Caps, you know, they have some of those photos up, but maybe not necessarily saying what they are, you know, and people aren't going to take the time to look into it necessarily. But, you know, those teams played in the 40s and 50s, and you're getting to that point where anybody who would remember it is not around. So if you don't tell those stories, like I said, they're gonna disappear, and that's, you know, I don't want to see that, and I don't think anyone in Fort Wayne wants to lose that touch of history that, you know, otherwise would just go unrecognized, and they're too good of stories, and there's too much history to let that happen, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and obviously you're wearing a Fort Wayne Wizards, you know, and I think that's we brought the Tin Caps guys in here, and a lot of those guys were with the Wizards.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, you know, the Wizards would, you know, ever fade away or like one of these teams like that we've talked about here, but it just feels nice to have those come back because the Tin Caps, they can only do, you know, so much. They're trying to sell, you know, a lot of Tin Caps, Padres stuff, and they do sell, you know, some Wizards throwback stuff and have a throwback night, and they did a Daisies night. But I think it would be, you know, nice for them or fun for them if they wanted to, you know, tap into the Voltmen or you know, stuff like that. And I think, you know, maybe you've provided that in for you know a team for the Tin Caps to possibly do, you know, down the future of the, you know, history lessons that you may have learned yourself. You know, what was the one that was most fascinating to you to learn more about, that you were like eye-opening, and this was like, wow, I did not know this was here in Fort Wayne?
Yeah, I think the one for me that was the most interesting, because you think, you know, is the Zollner Pistons. So obviously the Zollner Pistons started in the NBA, you know, started before the NBA and then led to the creation of the NBA here in Fort Wayne, and then obviously moved to Detroit. But they also had a softball team, a men's fast pitch softball team that played at Zollner Stadium, which is actually what that stadium was built for.
Right.
So that was something I never knew, that you know, that organization, basically it was the sister team of the basketball team that they were playing, you know, and they were world champions in whatever league or organization that would have been in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
But, you know, digging in and finding pictures of Zollner Stadium, news articles when it was getting built, and pictures of it full for these softball games in the 50s and things. That was really interesting to me, and diving in, because there are a lot of pictures and game programs and things that I was able to find, which I think that one's extra fun because of the knowledge of the Pistons basketball team. So then kind of being able to show people the other side has been really cool. Yeah,
for sure. I want to transition into, you know, talking about the history of this stuff, and you're putting on an event, you know, which we have the poster behind you. And this podcast is, you know, going to be released the week of your showcase. Again, how did something like this come about? Where did the idea spark for you to put on this an event like this?
Yeah, so the Vintage Baseball Showcase is, you know, going to be, it's two teams, one from Indianapolis and one from Elkhart, that are coming, and they play baseball by 1864 rules. So old wool uniforms, no gloves, they pitch underhand. The construction of the ball is a little different. The bats are a little different. It's another one of those things that I, saw in other communities. When you get into baseball Twitter and baseball Instagram and some of that those communities, you see these things pop up, and realizing that I hadn't seen that in Fort Wayne. I remember a long time ago kind of it popping up as like, oh, there's going to be this thing, this vintage game. And for whatever reason, we were never able to make it out. But I think it was just kind of like a little pop-up thing at Shove Park. Like it was never a big event. Yeah. So I thought, I wonder what it would take to be able to put something like that together here. And reached out to the Indianapolis Blues down in Indy, and they were happy to come up and play, and they love to be able to play in front of new people and play in new places. So, being able to bring that kind of baseball and a unique new experience to Fort Wayne is really exciting. And I think, people that love baseball or just love events and sports and things like that, it'll be something unique and something different. And it's a free event. So being able to make it a community, family-friendly thing, that's always a plus for anybody. If you can teach people something, give people new experiences, especially for free, that's really cool. And we just love to see that kind of stuff in Fort Wayne. And whether it's baseball or any kind of sport or just any kind of cool event that comes to town, we definitely want to be able to provide that. So that's kind of where that came from, was just seeing other people doing it in other communities and not being in Fort Wayne for a long time.
Yeah, because I remember going to one. It was kind of like in the middle of a field of
that's what a lot of them are.
And it's just like you're kind of throwing this whole thing together, and having it at Lawton Park here in Fort Wayne, I think provides a good space for a game like this to go on. What are you excited the most about this event? How stressful or challenging has this event been able to put on? Because we're in the middle of putting on an event. I mean, and you're in the middle of one right now, obviously, coming up this week. Yeah,
I mean, I'm excited just to see people enjoying it. Yeah. I think that's the most exciting part for me, because that's why we're doing it, is for it to be fun and for it to be something that people will enjoy. So that's what we're really looking for, and I want to see, that kind of grow and what people look like or are looking for. As far as difficult, it's been tough a little bit, but not the most overwhelming thing. I've run sports events for a while, and, so that part I kind of have a little bit of a grasp of. But, definitely trying to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's and have everything ready and make it the best event it can be, I think is a big part of it. Right now I'm really focusing on, obviously this will come out closer to, hopefully I have it figured out by then, but thinking through some of the more entertainment elements, because like you mentioned, what you've seen has been just in a park. We want it to be more than that. We want it to be more engaging for people and more exciting and more fun. So trying to think of those little elements like that we can add in to make it an exciting and fun event for people. That's kind of what I'm working through right now, looking at.
Yeah, and I assume you want to make this like, a yearly thing.
That's the hope,
Yeah, to try and, gain more popularity and hopefully bring in more people.
Yeah, I think that's all. Obviously the goal is to be able to do it and grow it and scale it in ways that, to add more things to it and different elements.
Hi, everyone. We want to take a quick moment to shout out our podcast sponsors. Now, first, you might be wondering who I am, so let me introduce myself. I am Hannah Hannigan, and normally I'm behind the camera as the videographer, but today I wanted to be in front of the camera to shout out the people who made this podcast possible. Barrett McNagny and Sweetwater Sound are the two sponsors of our podcast, and they're both located in Northeast Indiana. If you don't already know who they are, let me introduce them to you. We're going to start with Barrett McNagny. As Fort Wayne has grown, the Barrett Law Firm has grown with it. Founded in 1876, Barrett McNagny is one of the oldest law partnerships in Indiana, and it's among one of the largest just in Northeast Indiana. They have the breadth of experience across a wide range of practice areas to provide you trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. And Sweetwater is actually the one we were able to purchase most of our audio and video gear from to make this podcast. So if you like how this podcast sounds or how it looks, be sure to check them out. Sweetwater, the nation's largest, and I would also add friendliest destination for music gear, is also your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. From audio interfaces, recording software, mixers, microphones, cameras, and lighting, Sweetwater has everything to get your podcast up and running. Enjoy personalized gear advice from their dedicated team of sales engineers, as well as free technical support to get your podcast connected and up and running. Really, what's not to love about that? So whether you already have a following or you're still chasing the next big thing, Sweetwater is going to be the ones to help you create a podcast that everyone will be talking about. So if you're interested in either of these companies, be sure to check out the links in our description. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
So as we're sitting here recording this, recently, Foster Park Little League Baseball, they had some mischievous people come in and take some of their equipment, and you put out a shirt, probably within, 48 hours, that, had the Foster Park logo on there, and trying to support them and all the 100% of the proceeds going to that to help them out. What does, Little League Baseball mean to you? Why did you decide to jump on this? And I don't know if you've played at Foster Park or if that's something that really meant to you, or you just saw, local baseball. Let me try to figure out how to jump in and help here.
Yeah, so I did play Little League Baseball not at Foster Park at Northcrest, but we played obviously at Foster some. But we live right now right down the street, like a quarter mile down the road from the fields. Mm-hmm. So when I saw, the first thing I saw was 07 Pub posted, I think last Wednesday. So 2 days after I think the incident happened, that they were going to be donating a third of their sales that evening to the league. So I immediately saw that, shared that post, and then somebody I know has a son that plays there, so I reached out and said, "Hey, do you know who I could talk to?"
Yeah.
So I got an email, sent Sean Davis, the president of the league, an email and just said, "Hey, let's talk. I want to see what we can do." So that was, I put together a design really quick and said, let's just get it out there and see what'll happen, and see if we can sell a few, get you guys a little bit of money, and try to help, get some more awareness, I think, because we have a good following of baseball fans, obviously, in this community, but also across the country. So, seeing, you never know what can happen by more people knowing of an organization in need, especially such a well-run and well-supported youth baseball organization, which is great to see in any community, but especially right in your backyard. So we put that together, and it's been unbelievable. We've sold almost 200 shirts in 4 days. Yeah. I probably sold 80 in less than 24 hours, and it's been unbelievable, the support that people have been pouring out into that, and everybody's just willing to help, which I think is really cool, and we're excited to be a part of that and to be able to support the league and support local baseball in this community. But I was talking to my screen printer that I do the shirts through and kind of told him, hey, this is what I'm looking to do, or timeline able to do it, and he even jumped in and was like, I'll do them at cost for you, so that's more money, more proceeds that are going to be able to go to the league. So even him right off the bat, no hesitation to be able to do that was really cool. So we're really happy. We've still got a week left right now of sales, and are hoping to keep getting more people to participate. But we're really excited to be able to help them, and I think getting more of a word out. And I've heard they've raised almost $15,000 already, I think, overall through their GoFundMe. So it's really good for us to be able to use our platform to do that and to support them for sure. Yeah,
and you have a line that is support local baseball, and and I've heard you talk about whatever level it is, So what where did that idea come from, and what does that mean to you, to support local baseball? Because I know what it means to me. It's it's going out and supporting the Tin Caps, or going out and doing stuff with the colleges. We have a lot of successful college teams. A couple of them are in the NEI World Series, quote unquote, right now, that are going on. So what does supporting local baseball mean to you? Yeah,
I think especially you saying what it means to you. That's exactly it. It means something different to everyone. Yeah. it came from talking to a couple of friends of mine that run a website called Baseball Mapper, that it's kind of a website map essentially that aggregates all baseball fields of any level, teams, stadiums across the country. So if you're, going on a road trip, whether it's for baseball or not, you can kind of pull up and see what teams are near where you're going to be. And cool. So they're really in on that, and talking with them, and we kind of came up with this idea of support local baseball as like an initiative. And I've kind of just continued to run with that. And we want it to mean something different to everyone. Every community has something unique around the game of baseball, whether it's, I always talk about town ball in Minnesota, which, if you're not familiar, Minnesota has all of these local teams where like each individual, like if it were around here, New Haven would have a team, Columbia City would have a team, Angola would have a team, and they're drawing thousands of people to these games, if not in the high hundreds. And it's a huge deal up there. Well, that's totally different and a story that no one knows if you're not in that community. So letting those people be able to express that that's what local baseball means to them, or telling that story to people across the country because they might see that and want to implement something similar. There's a organization we work with called Friendly Baseball in the Fort Worth area that does adult rec pickup baseball every Monday night in the summer. They just get people together and they pick teams and they play. And that's not, you see that in basketball playing at parks, but for it to be so organized and, such a structured group, and to offer that opportunity to play the game to so many people is really cool. And we really love that. And that's a story that's support local baseball in that community. And maybe somebody will learn about that and start another organization like that in their community or things like that. So it means so many things to so many people. And that's what it's all about, I think, is just telling baseball stories across the country that may go under the radar. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, like I said, I coach baseball. I coach a travel team that's, from here. So, supporting local baseball in that way, I'm a volunteer coach. I don't get paid to coach. I do it on my own time. And, that's giving back. I know that the head coach who was my previous coach when I played in Little League and in high school. So, that's what it means to me, is you finding a way to give back to, baseball, the game of baseball, in any sort of way,
exactly.
Whether going to, like I said, a Tin Caps game or a high school game around here locally. So there's many ways, like you said, that you could do it. So for you, what are some of your favorite designs that you've been able to create?
Yeah, so I think our Fort Wayne Daisies stuff that we have here is one of the most popular that we have, but also it was one of the first things I did, and it was really cool because it kind of tied together the two elements of what I do with the designs for the business. Is it brought something that did exist and added to it in kind of a way that was beyond what they had. The Daisies had some logos and things like that, but, it was never anything fully developed. It was more like the city seal and kind of the FW just in a circle. So being able to take the style of the time, some things from, game programs and stuff that you would see, and be able to develop more of a modern but still vintage look out of that. That was really fun. That was a fun project to work on, and to see people, really embrace it is cool. And then the Voltmen also that I brought, that one was cool because, again, it's a story of GE that people in this community know, but they don't know about the baseball. And to be able to work with kind of, again, within something that did exist, and some of the pieces that I was able to find in pictures, and to build almost a full brand for the team out of that, to help tell that story. I think those are two that were really fun for me because they really joined together the history and the modern creation, and bringing it into today's world and today's baseball, baseball branding elements.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, what what is the story behind the GE Voltmen? You know, it's something to do with the NBC, and I you know, reference, you know, reading up on you. This is something that you've talked about recently as well.
Yeah. So the Fort Wayne Voltmen were technically, if you look back, they were just kind of called the Fort Wayne Semi-Pro Baseball Team, and then had different sponsors over the course of time. So in 1947 through 1949, General Electric was the sponsor of the team, and they won, I believe it was called the Michigan, Indiana, Ohio League or something along those lines. Which qualified them for the NBC World Series, or the National Baseball Congress World Series in Wichita, Kansas. And that was, at the time, the premier semi-pro baseball championship. And it was a huge deal. You know, you still look and, you know, Satchel Paige played in that tournament. Barry Bonds played in that tournament. Kirk Gibson played in that tournament. Like all of these major league Hall of Famers have played in this tournament. And the Voltmen won that tournament 3 years in a row, 1947, 1948, and 1949. And then the sponsorship changed, and they ended up winning it one more time in 1950 with the Capehart Television Company sponsoring them. So, you know, the company that came out of Philo Farnsworth and the TV being created in Fort Wayne. And then also Allen Dairy, which was a local dairy company, sponsored them again, and they won in either 1952 or 53, I think. So they won a total of 5 NBC World Series. And again, at the time, that was one of the premier tournaments. And they are currently celebrating or getting ready to host their 90th tournament. And we are actually, through our work with the Voltmen and kind of bringing that to life and telling their portion of the NBC story, we just launched last week the 90 years of NBC Champions collection in conjunction with the tournament, where we're highlighting 9 teams through 9 different shirt designs, our Voltmen being one of them, to highlight other teams who had similar success over those 90 years, and, you know, again, tell the stories in these communities that maybe they don't get told. Some of these teams still exist because obviously we've gone up into today's champions and things like that. But team in Bismarck, North Dakota that Satchel Paige played for. There's a team in Grand Rapids that won multiple times.
So there's a team in Alaska.
Team in Alaska that's crazy. Still around. So things like that, being able to, again, reach into those communities and maybe tell unknown baseball stories. So that's a really cool project for us and a cool collaboration. But also then having the ties to Fort Wayne that tournament does really just makes it an extra special project for us.
Yeah, and those T-shirts, some of those haven't rolled out yet. You're rolling those kind of out, you know, over the course. So, definitely look out for those if that's a shirt that you're interested in. For you in the designs and coming up with some of the ideas and starting this out, you know, what were some of the challenges that you had starting out?
I think a lot of the challenge came from trying to figure out how to do it without investing a ton. You know, the design part it's not easy, but I'm a designer. I can create designs, but finding things that fit different apparel and some of that was tough, but really learning about different quality of shirts, the different processes, things like that for producing the product, but also being able to grow the business without a huge investment. You know, it's a single person operation, and, you know, now we've obviously got some other people that help us in various aspects, whether it's, you know, markets or, you know, some different promotion things. But, you know, finding a way to do that and manage the risk, I think, was the toughest part. And we were lucky, you know, I was lucky that I did the research and found I was able to do a lot of it print on demand, where I was never holding inventory. So, you know, when you ordered something, it was getting drop shipped and directly printed from offsite. And that allowed, again, you're just promoting it. I ordered a couple samples, was able to do the social content and then build the brand. So I've been able to, I think, every step of the way, manage to build the brand ahead of the investment portion. So I think that was the toughest part for me was I didn't, there's things as a marketing person, this isn't really the way you should do it, but this is the way I'm going to do it because I don't want to, I'm not quitting my job and doing this full time. Like that's not what this is. So that was the most difficult aspect for me, I think, is, learning how to balance that and still get the results you want without necessarily doing it the right way or the best way that you could do. That just requires a lot more time and money.
Yeah. How have you seen the baseball community respond to this? How I mentioned, you've done a couple of things with the Tin Caps. When after they win and they post a game winning, celebration with the Tin Cap, hat on their head. Your sticker is right there that says 260 on it. What has your relationship been with like the local baseball scene? How supportive have they been of this and of you?
It's been incredible. Right from the start, I knew enough people to kind of make some connections and give them kind of the pitch on here's what I'm trying to do. Will you share it? And one I credit a lot is Jim Shovelin, who, if you're the sports community around here, Jim.
Yeah,
he's on the radio doing PA. I knew him from when I was at the Mad Ants. And, I went and had lunch with him and just said, this is what I'm wanting to do. First thing he said was, well, I'll have you on my show. So I go on his Saturday morning show to talk about the business before it was really anything. It was just kind of an idea, and I had just started. And that support meant a lot, and he's got a lot of connections in the baseball community. So it kind of just started to stem from there. And then people have been receptive when I would reach out. I started doing things with Elmhurst Little League, who, at the time the company was still small. The brand was small, but they were willing to work with me and buy some shirts and sell them. And, so being able to have those stepping stones, and then some different athletes in the community, Hayden Jones, who played at Carroll and played in the Reds organization for a while and is now playing independent ball in Kansas City. He had reached out and just said, hey, I love what you're doing. I'd love to be involved. What can I do to help? So I sent him some gear. He posted some things, and that would gain a few followers. So kind of every step of the way, someone in the Fort Wayne baseball community has kind of latched on and spread it to their network and grown it organically that way. And it's been really great to see, and everyone has been really supportive. And, the Tin Caps, I don't work directly with them. The sticker is great, and I credit John Nolan for, I think, having that laying around and getting that on there. But, those guys have been really great, and I've talked with them multiple times, just kind of showing my support for what they're doing and making sure that they know that that's the goal of this company, is not to be competition with them. It's to support what they're doing and grow and grow what they're doing and continue to amplify their message. And they have been very responsive to that and appreciate that. And I hope there's opportunity to continue to grow that relationship over the years and as we go. But Fort Wayne baseball community is a very tight-knit group for sure, and it's been really great to be a part of it, and they've welcomed us in, very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned all these names, and I know of all these names. John Nolan, I've covered Hayden Jones. I've worked with Jim Shovelin. These are baseball people through and through for sure, and it goes back, even with Hayden Jones' grandfather, deep ties here in Northeast Indiana with baseball. So, before we get to rapid fire questions here and wrap up here, what's next on the horizon for Old Fort Baseball Company? Do you have future designs that you're working on? Do you feel like you might branch out into other sports? I know you've done some basketball stuff, obviously with like the Lures girls winning the state title, you did a shirt, and commemorating that. What's next, and where are you hoping to take this? Yeah,
I think it's kind of twofold. There's always growth with baseball outside of Fort Wayne. So there's some of that we're continuing, like the NBC partnership and things like that, to keep growing that. Within Fort Wayne, we definitely are looking at more high school stuff and potentially looking into some other sports. Baseball can be year-round, but it's definitely more seasonal. Yeah. So for us in that off season to continue to tell more stories. Again, it's all about telling stories and, letting people have that nostalgic feeling and maybe learn something. So whether it's different high schools telling stories of old high schools, some that don't exist anymore, some of those things, or, like I said, other sports, basketball, there's indoor soccer, there's indoor football history, there's, semi-pro outdoor football, some of that. So we're always looking at those kind of things, and what we can do there. And I think we're strong enough now as a brand that being Old Fort baseball isn't necessarily tying us to baseball.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning I didn't want to do that because I didn't want it to be confusing to people.
Yeah.
But now, I think people know kind of what to expect from us and what they're looking for. So I get asked a lot about some other sports and partnering with more, especially high school football. We did great with Lures football stuff last year and went out to a game and sold shirts at a game. And I'd love to do more of that and kind of get out to different events and things like that.
All right. As we wrap up here, we got some rapid fire questions, some hopefully quick and easy ones for you. They are tailored somewhat to baseball and design stuff. So what is your favorite retro logo of all time?
I think it would be the original Tampa Bay Devil Rays logo.
Yeah. What stands out about that one?
It's got neon colors, purples, neon greens, gradients, things, pure 90s of the designers kind of said they were able to start doing stuff on the computer and said, look what we can do.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of those 90s designs that was just designers having a new medium to design with, and it just really stands out. I actually just got a new Devil Rays hat the other day. My wife was in Tampa and picked one up because that just always sticks out to me. So
yeah, and I think their new City Connect jerseys have
those
some
are
of those,
they have those
elements
for sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask what your favorite Major League Baseball team is, but because you already mentioned it, the Cubs. Who's your favorite Cubs player of all time?
That's tough. I always go back to kind of some random ones, but I always was a big Greg Maddux fan and Kerry Wood. Yeah. Those were kind of when I was younger, Maddux when he came back and played for them a second time was always a favorite of mine. So those I think would be the two I would probably go with.
All right. Locally here, Coney Island hot dogs or DeBrand's chocolate?
Oh boy.
You're more of a sweet tooth, or you?
I think I'd have to go DeBrand's, but for the ice cream sundaes, that's a must.
Yeah, don't make the mistake of going there and eating that strictly as your lunch. We can speak from personal experience here on the marketing team.
Yeah,
that was the afternoon was
nap time for sure.
Nap time for sure. Johnny Appleseed Festival or Three Rivers Fest?
Three Rivers, I think.
Nice.
The junk food alleys, more of the sweet tooth. Yeah,
yeah, it's hard to beat. Other than the daisies and the Voltmen, what are the other favorite designs that you've had?
That's tough. One that I don't sell a ton of, I don't sell at the market here or anything, is the vintage or kind of retro Padres logo that we redesigned into just say Fort Wayne, where it would say Padres. So if you're a baseball fan, it's the one that's kind of pinstriped and bright orange and navy blue, kind of what the Padres wore when they first were the Tin Caps affiliate in 2001. That one's just fun because I like that old Padres logo, and then being able to bring it as a Fort Wayne thing is really cool.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you, Logan. I appreciate you coming in, telling your story. I know how passionate you are about this and this whole project, and you've turned it into something that's been wildly successful and been very supportive of the local baseball community here in Fort Wayne, and hope they continue to support you, not just here in Fort Wayne, but continued growth with this business. And we appreciate you coming in and tell your story.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me. This is a lot of fun.
Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast, and we'll see you next time.